Hello, everyone. This is Nayiri from Low Carb and Fasting. Our guest today is a board-certified physician in internal medicine and obesity. He's a physician who's very much interested in metabolic syndrome, in reversing diseases, and he's very passionate about what he does. Dr. Tro Kalayjian. Let me repeat that. Dr. Tro Kalayjian. Welcome to Low Carb and Fasting.
Yeah, you're the only one who got the name right. Can you hear me, first of all?
I can hear you very well.
Perfect, because I just changed the mic, so I just want to make sure you can hear. Yeah, you're the only one who got the name right. Well, and I think we both know why. Look, I'm so happy to be here. I know Rosetta's talked with you and Natalie, and I know you've done some amazing translation work. So I'm happy to be here to support Nayiri.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to have you on the channel today. Okay, Tro, let's start with your professional background, especially for anyone in our audience who may not be familiar with you and your work.
Yeah, so I'm a board certified internist. I'm also board certified in obesity medicine. I've published in the peer-reviewed journals on binge eating, diabetes, high triglycerides, cholesterol. And I've devoted my career, my mission is to end diabetes and end obesity. I've devoted my career to it. I've been practicing for 10 years. I have a practice in New York, a telemedicine practice where we care for people basically all over the United States, and we do have some people throughout the world. We don't care for people throughout the world medically, but we give them education and guidance and a community. But we provide basically cutting edge medical care in the United States, remote blood pressure cuffs, remote body composition scales, continuous glucose monitors, which we talked about a little bit before we started. And we help patients 100% remotely, meaning you're in the comfort of your own home. We send you labs near you. We send you to get imaging near you. We get you a virtual health coach. You know, your labs and imaging are reviewed completely remotely, and you're cared for medically completely remotely. So it's kind of awesome, my job. I literally get to help people lose weight and reverse their diabetes, reverse their hypertension, and that's my job. It's like a miracle.
And come off medications.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a huge deprescription rate. In fact, companies hire our team so that we can help get their workforce healthier. And so we can, but what we found is we actually save those companies more than what we cost, right? We save them in insulin costs, we save them in medications, diabetes and blood pressure medication costs. So yeah, it's just an amazing job. We have an amazing team. My office manager has been with me for 4 years now. Talene, she's just absolutely amazing. I have a health coach, a director of health coaching. She's the program director. She herself has lost 220 pounds. Amy Igus kept it off for multiple years now. We have another amazing health coach, Brian Wiley, who's lost 100 pounds and kept it off for 15 years. We have an amazing medical assistant who's actually almost done getting her mental health counseling degree. Her name is Tori. I mean, we have a team that is just unbelievable. So it's awesome. It's great. Yeah.
Dr. Tro, you have a very inspiring personal story that brought you into this space, the low carbohydrate space. And I know that that's the main intervention you use with your patients at your clinic. But tell us about your personal journey. I love the personal story.
Yeah, so the story, just how far back do you want to go with regards to the story?
From your childhood. that you
Yeah,
grew up as an obese child. I love that.
from my child. So, okay. Well, look, you know the cuisine. You
Mhm.
know, it's hummus, baba ganoush, pita bread. You know, yeah, you know, the meat is also mixed with cracked wheat. I mean, like literally, they put wheat into the meat, right? So, pakhlava. You know, oh my God, it's
Rice.
just yeah,
Yeah,
rice. Yeah,
yeah.
tons of rice, and you know, good cuisine, but a lot of carbohydrate. And it's funny, like as you know, growing up, we had that traditional cuisine, but also we're in America, so it's it's intermixed with school lunch, right, which is a disaster, and it's also intermixed with fast food and whatever the restaurants are serving. And of course, every house has flour, sugar, and some processed oil. I mean, this is what I grew up in. And I was overweight. I remember being 8 years old, and I knew I was overweight. I remember my dad used to work in New York City in one of the finest French restaurants, and I remember we went to that French restaurant, and I was a little kid, 8 years old, 9 years old, and they had all these amazing desserts like French eclairs and all this stuff. And the head chef said, "You're Kevork's son?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, that's me." And he said, "I'll make you anything you want," And I said, "Oh my God, my dad told me you make a chocolate souffle." I didn't even know what a chocolate souffle was, but I was like, "Can you make me a chocolate souffle?" And he looks at me, he's like a, like you'd imagine, like the stereotypical French, he's like, "You don't need a chocolate souffle." I remember being 8 years old, and like to this day, it had an impact. And let me tell you, growing up throughout school, being overweight, my whole family overweight, brothers overweight, mom overweight, dad overweight, mom with diabetes, going to Weight Watchers with mom. I mean, this was the struggle, right? This was a struggle, and it was a lifelong struggle. And I was inspired at a very young age. I remember being 13. I was 13 years old. I was in the doctor's office. I was 205 pounds. I remember it to this day. And the doctor was like, I was 12 years old. He's like, right before my 13th birthday. And the doctor said, "You have to lose weight." And I remember sitting in the waiting room, right? Remember sitting in the waiting room for 2 hours, right? And I remember thinking to myself as I left, wait a second, this guy just put a TV in front of me, made me sit for 2 hours. He could have at least put a freaking treadmill in the lobby. Like, does he really care about my weight loss? So I remember I was very passionate about losing weight back then. And I was already starting to question, like, is the medical system capable of handling that? And I knew I wanted to be a doctor then. I had saw my whole family suffer, and it was that age, 13. I was like, I'm going into medicine. And I went into it. I followed the calories, mantra, the vegan mantra. I went through all sorts of weight ups and downs, and then I found myself a 350. Fast forward, medical school, college, gained 50 pounds, medical school, another 50 pounds, residency, another 50 pounds. And I was a 350-pound, board certified, doctor. And, I had personal training certification, and yet, the advice basically didn't work, which is, it's just a personal responsibility issue and a budgeting issue. You have to, it's your fault, right? And it's you should be moderating junk food. You can have some, but that's the message. And if you find yourself overweight, just make sure you count your calories and just exercise more than you take in. So, and that never worked. Go ahead.
Tro, you did mention the Weight Watchers, and I think for anyone in our audience who's familiar with the Weight Watchers system, will know very well that once you're a member of the organization or the company or the business, I should call it business, you're a lifelong member because you never achieve your goal and maintain your ideal sort of weight. What's wrong with the current system of counting calories? And it didn't work for you. It generally doesn't work with people. Generally doesn't. So what's so good?
Yeah, so there's a big problem with calories. So the problem is food has influence over us. Food is something we have to learn to live with, right? We need food to support every bodily function, every hormone, every cell in the body needs energy and nutrients. So we have something that we have to learn to live with, right? And then what happens next? We have food that is designed in a way, right, to promote eating, right? The food has an effect on us, right? The food itself. And so people who are experts at storing away fat, right? People who are experts at gaining weight, which if you think about it evolutionarily, we've been programmed to be. Humans have 2.4 million years of evolution, right? Which means that, 2.39 of those million years, we've had to be experts at storing. So the overwhelming majority of people, right now in this current food environment have metabolic syndrome, right? At least, about 90% have some sort of disease or some aspect of disease, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, or metabolic syndrome, meaning they're experts at storing and making energy available in their blood very quickly, right? With very little. So if you think about this, right? If you think about it, we have to learn to live with a constant drive to eat. You'll understand that whatever process you do is going to be lifelong, right? Whatever process, you're not going to wake up one day and be able to turn a switch off and not be hungry, right? You're not going to be able to wake up, turn a switch and say, I'm going to live with a life without food. We cannot abstain from food forever, right? Our social environments are completely predicated on our food environment. How do we get together, right? If I'm going to invite you over, Nayiri, what am I going to do? We're going to set the table,
Yes,
right? Okay, and we're gonna share a meal. So it's a way we express love. It's a cultural norm. Everybody's tied, socially to dinner in this country. They come home, they eat dinner as a family, right? So we're not escaping food, and we certainly don't have the control to flick that switch and turn appetite off, right? So this is a drive, okay? A drive to eat that's irreconcilable, that will live with you until you die, right? Or maybe until something really bad happens. And yet we have to learn to live with that drive. And that drive can become very manipulative, right? How many times have you said, I just, ate off plan. I might as well eat, French fries, pizza, I'll finish this week, I'll go on vacation, and then I'll start again after that, right? Look how manipulative that drive is. Or have you ever found yourself saying, oh, I've been really good, I deserve it, right? I've been really good, I deserve it. Like, I've been sticking to my diet, I deserve it. And then somehow you eat this food. I mean, think of how manipulative this drive to eat is, right? It is now, yeah, you may be a great person, but you also deserve health, right? You may have been off plan, right? But it's not a reason to go destroy your health for 3 weeks on end, right? So this drive to eat is irreconcilable, and calories have nothing to do with it.
This
right? And the
sort of notion about sort of treats. Oh, I deserve the treat because I worked out. I was on the treadmill for about 30 minutes, and now I deserve a treat. It's like for every little thing we seem to do in life, we want to reward ourselves with a treat, and that treat is usually not steak and eggs. It's literally, for most people at least, it's junk food. It's what many call food-like substances. So there's something wrong culturally, I think, with how we view junk food.
No, I actually think it's completely expected. I don't think it's wrong, right? So let's unpack it, right? What is going on here, right? You're saying maybe it's culture, right? Maybe it's that person doesn't have self-responsibility. Maybe it's what is this? What is it that's driving it? But at the base of it, right? We are animals with this drive to eat, and there's different. This is how manipulative the drive to eat is, right? It can manipulate your emotions. I'm going to give you a quick example. Okay. So you have a family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a car?
I do. Yes.
Okay. If so does somebody live with you?
Yeah, we're a family, so yeah.
Okay, perfect. Let's say your husband, kids, somebody comes up to you and says, "Mom," or your husband says, "Hey, look, you have a flat tire. Don't drive right now, right? Let me help you fix it." What would you say?
Usually, how far can I go without having to fix it?
Yeah, no, but what do you say? Come on, you don't say that. You say like, "Oh, thank you. That's all right, right? Like, thank you, right?"
Sure.
You feel appreciated, right? If your husband says, "I think somebody's taking money out of your bank account, don't buy anything just now," right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you say?
Well, yeah.
Thanks for telling me,
yes.
right? If your husband says when you're about to have, pachlava, Nayiri, don't eat that. How does that feel in that minute when she says, "Don't eat that"? How does it feel?
Almost offensive to be.
Yeah. Okay. So you feel agitated, right? You're like angry, like, I'm my own person. I can eat that, right? Don't tell me what to do, right? So why is this? Did culture make you feel oppositionally defined, angry, and agitated in a scenario where you're being supported, right? Did society do that, right? You feel supported if he says, "Hey, wait, your tire is flat. Hey, wait, there's somebody stealing money from your bank." But when he says, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't eat that," right? All of a sudden, we feel angry, agitated, opposition defiant. So this drive to eat, it's manipulated your emotions. And you're not the only one. I'm not the only one. Every single person in this office responds the same exact way. "Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. I'm a grown person. This is the response they would say if somebody said, "Don't eat that." So, and just in the same sense that your emotions can be manipulated by this drive to eat, logic, our logic can be manipulated, right? I've been good. I deserve it, right? I've been off plan. I might as well keep going off plan, right? They both can't be true, right? Have you ever done this one? I'm sure you've done this one because, we're Armenian. So I was 350 pounds. I wanted to lose weight desperately, and I would eat my kids' leftovers. Guess what I would say?
We don't want to waste food.
We don't want to waste food. Now, do you think that I'm thinking about those kids in Harapach that are worn torn when I'm eating that food? Do you think that's why I'm eating? No, right? So just for the listener, Harapach is a disputed area of land that Armenians were basically massacred about 2 years ago. It was very tragic. But anyway, it's a very rural kind of area, strapped for resources, and a lot of hungry people, a lot of orphanages from family members who've been killed in generations of war. But as much as my heart goes out, and we've donated absolutely to those causes, the reason why I'm eating in that minute, right, has nothing to do with that. Right. So my logic has even been manipulated. Right. While it's true we shouldn't waste food, starving kids and orphans in Harapach have no reason, has nothing to do with why I'm eating. So something's manipulated my logic even.
So
And
how much of, Dr. Tro, how much of this manipulation is controlled by our hormones?
so look, take the next step, follow this. So your emotions have been manipulated, logic can be manipulated, right? And you can say to yourself, well, I'll just have a little bit. And while it's true, just a little bit is fine, right? Like, what happens next? I'll just have a little bit more, right? I'll just have a little bit more. So this logic, when it comes to the drive to eat, when it comes to food addiction, it is a manipulative problem. You can't trust it. You can't trust your emotions. Why would you feel oppositionally defined? Why would you feel angry and agitated when somebody's supporting you? You can't trust that. You can't trust your logic because it's going to say logical things like we shouldn't waste food, but it has nothing to do with your relationship to what that is, right? Something is manipulating you to eat. And the worst part is outlook, and your mentality, right? You'd never, get a flat tire and say, you know what, I'm just going to stab all my tires and I'm going to smash my windows and then I'm going to start with a new car on Monday. We would never say that.
Mm.
Right? So this is our outlook has been manipulated when it comes to food. And how much of it is hormonal? A big component is, like, we can see it. High triglycerides make you leptin resistant, makes your brain hungry, right? Like, we see leptins through the roof. We see triglycerides in the 300s, right? Glycemic variability, right? Even diabetes in itself, the glycemic variability, you could tell your listeners, right? What happens when your sugar goes from really, really high to really, really low? What is your brain saying? It says, get me awesome food.
I'm hungry. Yeah.
What's that?
Uh,
Yeah.
You just feel hungry. But even I've mentioned this on this channel before, but even with me, obviously I wear a CGM, I'm type 1 diabetic. But I notice if my blood sugars are above my normal range, as they're dropping down, I don't need to get to hypoglycemic range, but as they're dropping down, even when I'm technically still sort of high, I start feeling shaky, almost the same symptoms as someone would feel when they're having a hypoglycemic episode. So same symptoms as they're dropping down.
Do you want to hear something sad? Do you know how long we've known that dynamic blood sugar changes, what you're describing, right? It's not absolute low levels. It's just the downturn.
Yes.
Do you know how long we've known that that's the cause of hunger? That's a huge cause of hunger. Do you know how long we've known that?
Over 100 years.
Yeah, well, not quite that long, but close. 1959, it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, Gene Mayer. Okay, in 1959, he said, because they didn't know, where does hunger come from? Is it the brain? Is it the stomach? Is it the organs needing energy? What is it? We don't know. And he did tests and he showed that what you're just describing, glycemic dynamic changes, predicate hunger. And we've consistently shown that over the years, the 80s, the 90s. David Ludwig did a study in 96. They've done studies all throughout the last 20 years, culminating in a massive study in 2021 with 8,000 CGMs and 80,000 meals, showing that dynamic blood sugar downturns cause hunger, cause people to eat more, be more hungry, snack more often, eat more in the next 4 hours, eat more in the next 24 hours, right? So one of the languages of hunger is insulin and glycemic variability, that blood sugar fluctuating.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of it is insulin resistance, right? Which makes those fluctuations more likely, right? And it raises up your triglycerides, right? And those triglycerides cross into your brain, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, tells your brain, stop responding to leptin. So this is a foraging signal. And people are like, well, why do we have this thing? It's such a flaw. No, it's not a flaw. It is beautiful. It's by design, right? If you are a grizzly bear and all of a sudden there's a ton of berries and salmon, what do you want to happen? You want to be hungry. You want to keep eating. You want that, fat, that sugar, that sweet, that, the salty taste from the oysters that they're eating. You want all of this to drive you to eat from a number of different mechanisms, right? And we didn't escape these signals. We may have been able to master our food environment in the last 70 years, but those hormonal signals, those glycemic signals, they've remained. And this drive to eat that every animal has is very manipulative in our modern environment. You can't trust your emotions when it comes to food. You can't trust your logic. You can't trust your outlook, right? So this is a lifelong process for most people, and most people don't understand this. I mean, what doctor has sat down and said, hey, look, this is like an addiction. This is like an addiction. You're not going to wake up ever and be like, oh, I don't want food, right? That's not gonna. So you have to reconcile this. You have to figure out a way to manage it. And you can't trust your emotions. You can't trust your logic. You can't trust your outlook. You can't trust any of it. And on top of that, you can't trust any of your doctors who said count your calories, right? They don't know. They don't know this, what I'm explaining to you. They don't even know what leptin resistance is, right? They don't even know. They don't even know this simple thing that right? By looking at your CGM, that a blood sugar fluctuation causes you hungry without an absolute low number.
Yes.
How many doctors know that? Maybe I could count 200 in the world right now. Maybe 200, maybe 500 maximum. And they're all, Society of Metabolic Health Practitioner certified, which is the medical organization we started. So it's where does somebody turn for help? Nowhere. Right? Weight Watchers says eat less. So what happens when you eat less? What happens when you eat less calories? You tell me, Nayiri, what happens?
I mean, I've never had food addiction problem.
No, but you
I've
just
never been obese, but I know that if you're eating less, or even for me, if I'm eating less, restricting calories or restricting my food portions, all I'm doing all day long is dreaming about food. I'm hungry.
You go. Perfect. So when you restrict calories and you restrict energy, the result is increased hunger and increased cravings, right?
Yes, and less energy for me.
Right. And forget about you feel like crap. But okay, so doctors are telling people who don't have a good relationship with food, don't understand food, the doctors themselves don't understand food and hunger. They are literally making people more hungry. Right? And you don't have food addiction, but you said yourself, if your husband takes away that baklava, you're like, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing, right? Like, and I'm sure now you're like, yeah, I definitely don't want that baklava, but like in that moment, so like you may not have food addiction, but you can relate to that signal, who are you to tell me what to eat? Right? So the thing is that our doctors, by telling people to eat less calories, right? They are setting people up to fail. These are people who cannot manage their hunger, they cannot manage their cravings, and they're driven to be expert storers of energy, right? They're hormonally driven to be hungry. It's like a foraging signal. It's like trying to tame a bear in the fall. Not going to happen. That bear is going to be violent, so it's a problem, and our doctors don't know how to deal with it. Sorry to talk so long.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just wanted to say, it just reminded me of, sort of friends from my, I would say, teenage years. Who were slightly overweight, and they would start counting calories. And I remember many of them would look at a bar of chocolate and look at the package and, oh, okay, so only 100 or 200 calories in it. So they literally would count like up to 500-600 calories. I don't understand calories. I've never counted calories, but 600 calories per day. But all they would eat is 2 bars of chocolate to add up to the 600 calories. Of course, they're setting themselves up to failure because they probably ended up nutritionally deficient. You're not getting the nutrition your body deserves from those 2 bars of chocolate per day. And they would be constantly hungry. So they would give up. Oh, I'm not dieting now this week, but maybe I'll start again next Monday. So you are set up, they were doomed to fail.
Yeah, I think the problem is nobody taught people how to eat. You know, nobody's taught people how to eat. Like, how do you eat to be full? How do you eat to understand your hunger? How can you decrease your hunger in the short term? How can you decrease your hunger in the long term? How do different diets work, right? And nobody's done that. All they do is they take somebody who's most likely to blame themselves, right? Most likely to blame themselves, right? Somebody who struggled with obesity lifelong, right? And weight loss issues lifelong, right? Even diabetes patients, right? When you walk into the office and the doctor says your A1C is 8.5, 90, you have to do better, right? Like, how does that feel, right? You're more likely to blame yourself, right? So if you're blaming yourself and they set you up to fail, when you do fail, who are you blaming? Yourself, right? And nobody's thinking, wait a second, like maybe I have it all wrong. Maybe I don't understand the power and the nature of what it is I'm trying to accomplish. And most people don't. They come into my office, we've helped over, 1,000 patients lose 40,000 pounds. Okay, we've helped over 1,000 patients lose 40,000 pounds. We've published countless things into the medical literature, including triglycerides going from 1,000 to 150, A1Cs of 12 going to under 6. I mean, we've put it all there. Now, binge eating symptoms going from through the roof to non-existent. So the issue here is our doctors have not taken enough responsibility. Our nutritionists have not taken enough responsibility, right? If you give a drug to somebody and they don't tolerate it, well, now you're on the hook to help that person find something else, right? You can't just abandon them and let them blame themselves. So this is a problem. I think most doctors, dietitians, personal trainers, they're not equipped to deal with this.
No.
So the issue here is our doctors have not taken enough responsibility. Our nutritionists have not taken enough responsibility, right? If you give a drug to somebody and they don't tolerate it, well, now you're on the hook to help that person find something else, right? You can't just abandon them and let them blame themselves. So this is a problem. I think most doctors, dietitians, personal trainers, they're not equipped to deal with this.
No.
They
don't have the right knowledge. And I remember in my high carb sort of diet days, because that was the recommendation from Diabetes UK. You have to eat carbs, you have to eat 3-4 times a day, and you have to take insulin. I had a pump. I remember my diabetes specialist nurse telling me, your A1C is too high, Nayiri, so you need to be more proactive. And she was literally blaming me. She put the blame on me not being smart enough. She literally said, you have to be more proactive. You have to use all the different options on your pump. You have a pump, you're privileged to have a pump, and so use all the different options. So, and of course I would, I do have some intelligence to actually use all the different options, square bolus, extended bolus, taking 2 units up front to cover that spike after the pizza, and I would never succeed. No one ever told me the best way to avoid those highs is just not to eat that pasta or pizza. No one ever told me the information I needed. I really would have benefited from. They told me to be more smart with my pump. It's like putting the blame on me, and I literally dreaded going to my diabetes clinic and seeing my doctor and the nurse, because I felt like I'm not smart enough. I'm not using all the options in my pump, which I was, but and you
didn't think about a second. Did that person, just go back to those years where you were first diagnosed? When were you diagnosed? How old?
Oh, I was 44 years ago.
Okay, so all right. So now go to your teenage years. Okay. What were the foods you loved and you wish you had?
Oh, carby foods, definitely.
Yeah, list them. Go ahead. Tell me. Just give me like 5 examples.
Carby food, bread, pizza bread,
Bread,
like wrapping everything in pizza
chocolate,
bread.
ice cream, right? Did I miss anything?
All the desserts,
Yeah.
some Middle Eastern desserts, and what else did I like? I liked wheat, bulgur wheat, and everything served with
Yeah.
bulgur
Yeah.
wheat
Yeah.
or bulgur
Yeah.
wheat. I liked rice, I liked pasta, and I liked all the traditional meals, and they were all. That's another point I want to mention to you, Dr. Tro. They were all home cooked. So when people come and say, as long as you're cooking everything at home, you are going to
That's
be
even
healthy. I'm
false. Let me
sorry,
tell
but
you, the grains are different, one, and the oils are different. Like, it's funny. My mom was telling me, oh, this Muhammad recipe has been in the family for years. I'm like, oh, right. What are the ingredients? Walnut, red pepper paste, whatever they put in it, a little molasses, and vegetable oil. I'm like, Mom, vegetable oil has been around for like 40 years. Like, what do you like, halabin mitcha, like, they didn't have vegetable oil.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, this is a new phenomenon. So even when we say home cooked, you're like, I'm not sure it's really home cooked. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, to your point, all those things you ate, even the traditional staples, and even, let's say, the other things, chocolate, ice cream, pizza, bread, right? That endocrinologist, did she ever say, hey, you can use this almond flour, right? And you can put it with a little bit of butter. You can have bread. It's going to taste awesome. Did she ever say, you interviewed Rosette? I know Rosette mentioned she talked to you. This has been her passion. Do you know how many people, lifelong type 1 diabetic patients, that their life has been changed, that they can enjoy a bread without any blood sugar fluctuations, that they can enjoy a piece of cake? And most of the patients that have type 1 diabetes, they don't want much. They just want to take, hey, all you need is a little bit of monk fruit and almond flour, right? It's none of this is health food. None of this is weight loss food, right? But it's a way to eat low glycemic food, right? Did that endocrinologist tell you you could take cacao, put a little bit of sweetener in it, and now you can enjoy chocolate? Did they ever say that to you? Did they ever say to you, you can get a zucchini, you get a spiralizer, it's going to taste like the best pasta you've ever had? Did she ever tell you that?
no,
Right? And so you felt bad, but in reality, they didn't give you the tools. So this comes back to responsibility, right? While it's true, the endocrinologist doesn't force feed you carbohydrates. What did they do? They shamed you, they blamed you, and they gave you no tools. So this is my passion. Is like, I'm here to disrupt medicine. I'm here to take all of these people and show them how inadequate they are and give people a different way. Because this is the standard of care: shame, blame, and no help. Right? Shame, blame, and no help. And you may not have food addiction or obesity, but as a type 1 diabetic, I know you know what it feels like when you walk in that office and they said, you should just be doing more. You should just be doing better. Nayiri, doesn't look good today, right? I know you're eating those chocolates,
but
right?
in their defense, and I'm not defending, but in their
Yeah.
defense, I mean, this was going back 7-8 years ago when I first started low carb. The knowledge, Dr. Tro, wasn't there. They genuinely did not
No,
understand,
90.
or
I'm
was it?
sorry. You're excusing their ignorance. Okay. 1959. If you want, I'll bring up the study from the New England Journal of Medicine. 1959. There has been years, countless years. And while I don't blame them in the sense that their institutions never taught them, the ADA didn't even finally accept until 2019 that low carb diets are appropriate, right? How does that happen? How does it happen that we've known for 100 plus years, published in the New England Journal of Medicine countless times, researchers, Atkins, Yudkin, how does it happen, right, that they're all there, right? And our doctors don't adopt it, right? Our doctors aren't aware of it. It takes two parts. One, it's being prevented from getting to them systematically, right? And that's their education, right? And that's why we created the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, okay, which is a group literally that I founded with Doug Reynolds. We have 500 doctors now and countless other, physical therapists, nurses, and dietitians that are members. They didn't get the education. So fine, we made that, okay? But you have to not be curious. You have to not think about what you're doing. You have to actively be disregarding what you're saying, or you have to actively not be questioning what you're doing. I mean, you see that play out now. I mean, before, I don't want to, am I allowed to talk about controversial topics?
Oh, please do. Yes.
So look at this, before in the United States, okay, just to give you an example of how perverse this is, and I'm pro-vaccine. My parents are vaccinated. Many of my patients are vaccinated, but I want to talk about the hysteria. Before any trial was done in children, they already generated CPT codes for the vaccine. Before any trial was done, in 6 months to 5 years, they had already generated the codes to administer the vaccine. They disbanded the FDA Advisory Committee for Pediatrics. They said, we don't need you, and we're going to approve it with emergency use. At the FDA hearing for emergency use for adults, okay, they said, we're going to approve it for kids, and they said, we will not know the side effects until we give it. This is what they said. So my kids are, fully vaccinated except for flu and for COVID. So and I tell all of my patients that you should consider vaccines. We look at each one independently, but I'll tell you without any question that my belief is that doctors, right, before the vaccine was approved, there was people saying, I can't wait to give this vaccine to my patients and my kids. Doctors who said this. So what's going on here? Right, you have to understand, they're promoting, before they've ever looked at the data themselves, an idea of something that they think will work, and they're vehemently supporting it, right? Before they even think will it work. One of those is a frenemy, I guess, or Yoni Friedhoff in Canada, this obesity researcher. He said, obesity doctor, who preys on people with obesity, in my opinion. He said, before approval, I cannot wait, until we're able to give this to every patient. But let's think about this. He didn't even ever look at the trial results. He didn't even look at the data, right? How can you say that? It's like saying, I can't wait to experiment on my patients. So if you look at how quickly our doctors and pediatricians adopted this, I watched every advisory committee meeting. I read every advisory committee document. Okay, I read all of the published papers, right? And I look to myself and I see my colleagues just saying, go ahead and take it. And I'm not telling you, everybody should go talk to their doctor. But the problem here is doctors, right? And when I started saying, hey, guys, be cautious in kids, there seems to be myocarditis, right? In young men particularly, right? Meanwhile, the colleges are mandating young men get 2 shots and a 3rd shot. Wait a second, they're COVID, maybe they've already had COVID, right? So there's a systemic problem. Doctors aren't defending the rights of our patients. Doctors aren't looking into why they're recommending some, does the evidence support what I'm saying? I can't wait to give this shot to my kids. Well, is there any data in kids, right, that justifies the use? Right. So it's not that the vaccine is a problem. The vaccine, I believe, is a savior for, tons of people. We have a country filled with sick people, older people with diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and they may be truly a benefit to these people. But a 17-year-old kid who's had COVID twice, right? Is it a benefit to that person, right? And do you have the ability to think? So I think that the problem when it comes back to nutrition, I want to tie it together here. It's our doctors. Our doctors are not critically thinking. They're not thinking beyond what they're told. The AMA said to give this vaccine. They wrote a CPT code. Let's just give it to every 6-month-old and not ask questions, right? And this is the problem, right? So in this, you're defending your endocrinologist. I'm sure he or she is a lovely person, but hey, in front of me is somebody who's having trouble managing their blood sugar. Maybe I should show them how to eat food in a way that doesn't make it worse, right? It's her fault. She needs to do better and learn the thing more. It's how can I help, right? So I'm very passionate that doctors need to take responsibility. Sorry, and they need to critically think because they don't. Sorry, my staff is going to hear this and they're going to say, Tro, you went down the rabbit hole right now. I'm sorry if I got too controversial.
Oh, no. Well, we needed to mention that. That wasn't in my topics to discuss today, but I'm very glad you mentioned it. I would say when I first started low carb, it was, I found out about it and I wanted to try it and I had absolutely no support. I've said this over and over again in my channel. As a type 1 diabetic, I would have appreciated. In fact, I needed the support, but I did very well without that support, without that acknowledgement and encouragement from my physicians. But I remember in the very beginnings, my diabetes consultant or endocrinologist, as you call them in the United States. So my diabetes consultant told me, there is not enough data, which now I know is wrong, about this low carbohydrate lifestyle. Besides, she said, and this is word for word, I remember it. She said, you're still young. So if you are considering having a baby, cutting out carbohydrates is not going to help you. This is exactly what she said. You need carbohydrates to remain fertile if you are going to have another baby, because you're still young, she said.
That's bullshit.
Now, I know that is...
She lied. Sorry. She lied.
Complete nonsense. I know that.
Yeah.
But now the tunes change. Now I have another diabetes consultant who at least supports. But I feel I personally understand my day-to-day management of my blood sugars by eating high protein diet, which is what I'm doing right now, but better than he does. He doesn't understand it, but at least he is not dismissive of it. And he tells me, whatever you're doing is working for you, so keep doing what you're doing. And sometimes that's, as a patient, that's all you need to hear. You need to be told, you're doing well, keep it up. I think it's important. I think it's extremely important, even if they don't have the right knowledge to give you the exact, sort of pieces of information you need. At least telling you, not dismissing you, is quite a big deal as a patient.
I'm going to tell you that I think we can do better. This is why we do it remotely. We monitor people remotely. We encourage them remotely. We offer support remotely. You're at home using your CGM. We say, great job, Nayiri. You're at home using your CGM and your glycemic variability, your coefficient of variation increases. Hey, can we help you, Nayiri? Like, what's going on? Right? Can we do something to help you? Or we see the weight passes a certain threshold and we reach it, we text you. Is there a way we can help you out, Nayiri? We know that 99% of weight gain happens under extreme stress. So we try to be a beacon of stress relief in a community for people. I think the current model of medicine is a disaster. Just flat out is a disaster. We have lemmings, we have people uninterested, not curious, and not responsible. They've said that the population is not responsible. Look at what people did with masks. 90% were using masks the first year. 90%. 80% of people in the United States took a vaccine with shitty data. 80%. So 80 to 90% of people want to do good. Will do what they're told, right? So who's responsible here, right? That's my philosophy is the doctors need to, and the dietitians and the personal trainers and the weight loss companies, right? They're responsible. So look, I'm sure your diabetes doctor is wonderful. I'm sure they're wonderful, but our profession needs to do better. I firmly believe that, and I'm working towards that. We're hiring doctors, right? We're expanding. We made the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners so that doctors could get educated. They could get a program to give them basic education in lifestyle modifications with regards to metabolic health. We've published it into the literature. In fact, another thing, Nayiri, I published it into the literature. Hey, we can predict who will get a high LDL with a low carb diet. We can help you predict it. And if you get a high LDL with a low carb diet, here is a potential remedy that may work, right? That has nothing to do with what you thought it was, which was saturated fat. We published this into the literature. And do you want to know what the premier lipidologist said? This was the most cited paper, okay, in the most shared paper in the American Society of Nutrition's publication. Do you want to know what premier lipidologist said? This is an embarrassment. This is an embarrassment. That's what they said. Thomas Dayspring, Chris Brenner, or Charles Brenner, some legacy dinosaur, said, this is an embarrassment, right? So this is the problem we face. So what is the problem? Very clear to me. It's our current doctors, the convention, and their way of thinking. So I don't let them off the hook. Sorry.
How big a role is the pharmaceutical company or industry playing here in manipulating? I wouldn't say data. Well, manipulating data.
It's a complex topic, right? So pharmaceutical companies set a high bar with the FDA for the types of trials doctors rely on, and at least regulatory doctors rely on, right? When it suits them, it has to be very strict. So let's just say we have amazing drugs now, particularly for diabetes, like one of which is semaglutide, right? They did a 2-year trial showing that it lowers A1C, it helps with weight loss, and there's some side effects, but it's a good drug. I mean, I'm not big on drugs, but if I use them, I believe in them. I believe in the ones that I use. Certainly, every drug has its side effects. Now, that's a 2-year trial where you're able to make sure somebody takes something, right? And so you have fairly good quality data, right? And you have fairly good quality data. Now, imagine doing that for a diet, right? How many people can maintain a diet for 2 years if they don't have the proper vision of what they need to do for their health, right? So most diet trials, even when they're a year long, people stop after 3 months, right? And they go back. Why? Because every holiday, every date, every movie night, it's always food. And our modern food environment is a bunch of companies making the best possible thing they can. So it is very challenging, right? It's very challenging when it comes to data literature. So the pharmaceutical companies set a high standard, and they pay all the doctors, right? Consulting fees. So they're more apt to say, use this drug. It works. It's easy. So from a systemic perspective, it's a problem. I don't think like anybody's, like sitting there and saying, I'm going to bash keto or whatever, but the scientists are highly biased. For example, a study that was just published yesterday by Christopher Gardner. He did a Mediterranean diet versus keto diet. And he said, look, there's no difference in A1C, right? There's no difference in A1C. Well, if you look at it, there was no added sugar in the Mediterranean diet, okay? It was already low carb, right? But they had some whole grains and fruits, so whatever, say that there was a difference. Well, you look underneath the hood, they stopped 5 or 6 out of the 30 patients, they stopped diabetes medication, 6 patients in the keto arm. And only 1 person stopped in the other arm, right? So of course, the A1C is going to be like the same. You stop more medications on one side. That's why the A1Cs are the same, right? So how does this happen? And then if you read his conclusion, it says there's no difference between the diets. If anything, keto slightly raises LDL. That was the conclusion. But the diet was actually better, and it led to more weight loss, and it reduced triglycerides statistically significantly. And if you excluded those 5 people who came off medications, it lowered A1C.
Yes. Yeah.
So, well, why would he do that? Why would he do that? Chris Gardner is a vegan on the True Health Initiative. Of course he would do that. So, yes, there is systemic issues. There is systemic problems, but it's complicated. When it comes to pharma, the FDA at times is strict and says you have to show cardiovascular outcomes. And that's the medication that I mentioned, semaglutide. It did that. They had to prove that it prevents, heart-related bad outcomes, right? But then when it comes to the vaccine, it's like we're approving a vaccine, in children with just showing that it makes antibodies. That's it. So when it comes to like they manipulate the system, right? They manipulate the system, and it's tough to explain this to the layperson, right? And when it suits them, they just disregard their own standards, right? When it suits them. And so same thing with Gardner's study, right? It suits him to disregard a proper conclusion, right? It suits
We
him.
did mention triglycerides. So let's talk about cholesterol and LDL. So you've been involved in some research, especially the recent one, which I'm very much interested in, with Dave, citizen scientist, Dave Feldman. You were looking at low carb sort of diet group, and why with some people LDL goes up, which it did in my case. So what did you find? What did the study look at specifically, and what did you find?
Yeah, so I'd love to go into it, and we'll kind of hopefully finish off here. But this study, what happened was about 5 years ago, I saw Dave Feldman talk about his own LDL changing with by adding carbohydrates. So about 5 years ago, I had patients were coming to the clinic, and they came to me because their LDL was elevated. And they were commonly very lean people who exercised, and their LDLs were astronomically high.
That was me.
And and I said, when we, I looked into the literature and I confirmed what Dave was talking about at that time, which was there's a relationship between how lean somebody is and how low carb they are and how infrequently they eat, right? There's a relationship between their resulting LDL. And if you bring back carbohydrates, there's a possibility that these can improve. And so in the literature, what we had at the time, we had disparate data. We had like a kind of montage of data. In anorexia, LDL goes up. The world's experts at eating less fat and less carbs and less frequently, their LDL goes up. And how do we normalize that? We refeed them and help them gain weight. In fasting, Ramadan fasting, the lower your BMI, the higher your LDL. So I'm going through the literature, I'm looking at drugs that make you pee out sugar. They raise cholesterol. So I'm seeing that there's this pattern that corresponds exactly with what Dave's saying. So I go to Dave, I'm like, Dave, I'm going to talk to these patients. None of them want to be on drugs. And we've added back carbs in them. And their LDLs have gone from 700 to normal, right? Not much, just a little bit of starch, right? About 100 grams, 50 to 100 grams. And their LDLs have normalized. And so I said, I'm going to publish a case series, you want to work together. So we got his data set, right, of 600 people who reported a similar phenomenon, and we analyzed them, right? What was their BMI? What was their, starting triglyceride, starting LDL? And basically we created a model, okay, to predict it. The leaner your weight, okay, and the lower your triglycerides and the higher your cholesterol before you start, right, the more likely you are to experience an LDL increase. And we showed it with a case series of 5 or so people in my clinic that modest carbohydrate reintroduction will lower the cholesterol. So and we called this the lipid energy model and the lean mass hyperresponders. The convention hates it. They said this is terrible, even though we lowered LDL by 500 in one patient without any drugs. 500 points LDL drop, right? Without any drugs, which is like insane. Typical drugs can make it go 30. We made it move 500. So this is they're not happy. They weren't happy. They said, you guys are dangerous and reckless. I mean, these patients came to us and said, I will not take a drug. I will not take a drug. So that was the paper, and it was massively shared throughout social media. And yet the convention seems to disregard.
Thank you so much for that. And I remember you said in most people, it was just something as simple as, introducing like a sweet potato back into their,
Correct. It wasn't much at all. Yep, absolutely. It was like 50 grams of carbohydrates in some cases.
There is so much more I would have talked to you about, but I know we're running out of time. You've got to run your clinic, Dr. Tro. I do appreciate the time you made for us today, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Nayiri, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good day.